September 3rd, I will have been sober for 14 years, if I make it that long. No, it's always nice to hear people say you worked hard, you got sober, you've won. And I'm not. I didn't script any of this because I thought it would be better if I was just honest about it. And you know, uh, I always say in my comedy, when I say I've been sober for 14 years and people clap, I always make the joke it was part of my probation. It wasn't. I've never been on probation, although I probably deserved it a few times, but I wasn't. Uh, I'm 60 years old now. And I'm starting to think a lot more about it and about how my drinking affected other people. I was never an alcoholic. Both my parents were alcoholics. My mother was a violent, uh, just horrible drunk. That's one of the reasons why foster care was the best thing that ever happened to me. My father was an alcoholic too, but he was never violent with me. He never, and when he figured out what was going on, it was too late. But he had a little different mindset. And my father was born in the 20s. So alcoholism was just like cigarette smoking was for a long time. It was just what you did. You got drunk. You drank. Um, I don't think I was ever an alcoholic. I didn't have the DTs when I quit. And I remember the day I quit, and it was interesting. The day before I quit, I had pretty much lost everything. I was still working. I just started doing stand up maybe 3 or 4 years before that. So I was terrible. And I was living with my ex girlfriend who died uh, recently in the last couple of years. Actually, about 6 months after I got married, she died. Just hard living, man. 53 years old, took a nap, had a couple drinks, took a couple Percocets, and had a heart attack in her sleep and never woke up. And that's what was my fate, too, if I didn't stop drinking. But the day before I quit drinking, which was December 2nd, my go-to was chilled tequila. And I would drink, at the end there, I drink about a fifth every night with 3 to 6 beers as chaser. And I remember the night before I quit, I did my first, I just did a double shot was my first shot, but I did about half of it and drank a big swallow of my beer. And I thought, this just doesn't feel right. So I didn't drink any more that night. Of course, my girlfriend did. And so the next day I did the 3rd. I did exactly the same thing. I took the rest of that half a shot of alcohol, of tequila, and drank more of my beer. And I sat it down and I just said, I don't think I can do this anymore. Of course, the girl I was dating at the time was she was all the aesthetic things that you'd want in a girl. She was, highly bipolar, but she was, she was a drinker, a druggie. She was a pig in the bedroom. She was everything that a drunk wants. And she told me, she goes, you just, And so the next day all day I didn't drink anything. And I think the following day I didn't drink anything either. And that's when she freaked out. She drank like a pint of vodka. We got in a big fight. She used to punch me. And she got real upset with me, and she grabbed me by the testicles and twisted it. And my balls were blue for 7 days. That was that was the day I couldn't live with her anymore. I was staying at her mom's house with her. And, that was the end of my drinking. It wasn't like a beautiful thing, I don't believe alcoholism or I don't believe being a drunk is a chemical thing. You have a chemical imbalance. I mean, maybe for me it wasn't. I think it was all about choices and depression and maybe thinking I deserved to be drunk because of all the stuff I'd went through, which people had it a lot worse than me. But I'm seeing now at my age that what I went through as a kid uh, as a little kid, uh, it affected me. It made me different. You know, I'm, I'm sure that, what I had was just minuscule compared to, some of the when you're in foster care, my parents would always bring me home after like a year. I think it was a social thing. I think they had to tell their friends, "Oh yeah, well our daughter lives here, but our son, he's just a fuck up." Well, I think it was hard to, you know, this was in the late '70s and early '80s. So they'd bring me home every after a year or so. They'd always bring me home for a couple months, and the amount of time that I stayed home after every uh, foster family I was with, and I was with four, would get shorter and shorter. Last time I was at home, it lasted about like an hour, and I was out on the street again. But you know, uh, I just thought that alcoholism, drinking was how you forgot about stuff. I mean, and uh, don't let me fool you. I was a drug addict too. I was on opiates for 13 years. I got hurt working. I owned my own construction business. I couldn't be down. I had 5, 6 families that, I was a roofing contractor first and then roofing and remodeling. And I don't know if you know anything about construction, but painters and roofers have the worst drug use and abuse and alcohol. It's because it's such a sucky job. It's a horrible job. And I tried to, provide a good place to work for 24 years for my guys. And I still have people that get in touch with me now after stopping my business in 2012 saying that they loved working for me because I was fun. But I knew that if I was hurt, if I was damaged, I couldn't, I couldn't be on the job and be better than everybody else and lead by example. So I started, I got hurt, and I started taking, I think Darvocets was the first thing they gave me. And then, went all the way up to Oxys. And by the time I quit in 2007, I was taking 300 milligrams of MS Cotton a day and drinking a fifth of tequila and beer and smoking weed and, whatever other things I could get from people. I was never a needles guy. I never did crack, but just as bad. All the stuff I was on a freaking drugstore full of shit. And, I didn't realize even back then when people didn't know what I was on, I was still not acting right. I was still, an addict. I was, I was a drug addict. And, it's not something that I would ever verbalize to her, my second ex-wife, because, I have so many, I have to number them. But I'm not proud of the way I treated my ex-wife or my son. Luckily, my son Tyler, he's like one of the best parts of my life. We were estranged for 10 years because of my behavior, about 10 years. And we've been close again now for 5 or 6 years. And it's just, absolutely changed my life that he, forgave me. And we spend time together when I'm on the road and stuff. And he's grown into this very knowledgeable, moral, hardworking, successful 31-year-old dude. And no thanks to me, of course. But that's one of the best things that came out of me not drinking anymore. Not to mention the health parts and everything. But I think I'm going to do a 2 or 3 part series about this, about the things that I affected and that affected me. And man, I just can't imagine the shit I put my second ex-wife through. Drugs, alcohol, adultery. I mean, I was there. I never beat on her, but I was the worst husband in the world. We don't converse at all. We don't talk, and rightly so. But I am remorseful and embarrassed, and all those people I affected when I was a drunk, because I was unpredictable. When I met Beth, I had been sober about 8 months when I met her, which she didn't know. And then when we started dating, I had been sober for about 2 years. So she got to hear some of it. I didn't really tell her about all of it until we'd been together a while. We dated for about 3 years before I moved in with her. So, And I've had some drug issues since I've been with her. My body's kind of broke up, and I started doing opiates again a few years ago, prescribed to me. The doctors were putting needles in my spine, which, by the way, if you're going to a doctor and they're putting needles in your spine to help you with pain, it's not going to work. They're just taking your money. So she went through that with me, and then, Beth was, I don't, if you're an alcoholic or a heavy drinker like I was, I don't care how long it's been. You still got to kind of stay, vigilant. Because it's real easy for people to come up and go, hey, here's a children's side of the kid. It's just one, man. Oh, you got it. I've had this happen to me just in the last few months where somebody listens to my show. I do a big alcohol, set in my comedy about drinking and stuff. I've had people listen to me say I was sober for 14 years and come backstage with a bottle of Patron and go, tonight's the night. And, I don't know why people would do that. It's like going up to a crackhead or going up to somebody who was on heroin for 20 years ago. You can handle it now. I don't know why people do that. I guess they think it's funny. But I don't want to make this video too long. I want to talk more about this. You need to realize something. If you have a drug problem, if you have an alcohol problem, you are not in control. I always thought I was Mr. Tough Guy. Tiggy. My dog doesn't like me talking about alcohol. If you're under the influence of something and you're addicted to it, you're not in control, man. You might think you are. I used to think I was Mr. Tough Guy. I used to think I could handle anything. I can quit whatever I want. And I did quit. I did quit opiates on my own. Weaned myself down. I quit drinking on my own. I just couldn't do that AA thing. I just couldn't do it. I went to a couple of meetings. It just wasn't for me. They've helped a lot of people. So I'm not putting AA down or NA or anything. I just, I started alone. I quit alone. But get control, man. Life is so much better when, I was depressed and I was suicidal at one point. Never before, never after. But there's always things you can do to try to, you don't have to quit in one day, you don't have to succeed with everything. You're going to fail. But if in your heart, you really want to quit, you can. And life's better without it, man. I never thought I'd be funny. I'd never thought I'd be a good musician, a great player. Not when I was drunk, but, under the influence. I never thought I would be a good singer. I thought that alcohol and drugs were the only thing that would get me through, and it wasn't, man. I have a weed permit for my skin cancer. I don't smoke before I go on stage. I don't get high before. I love performing sober, man. It's just best for me. I just think that maybe if these videos help a couple people, maybe it'll make the world a better place. I don't want anything for it. I'm not asking for, we always ask for subscribers and likes and all that, and that's great. But I think it's real important that I share some of this because, believe it or not, people used to think I was pretty cool. People used to think that I was pretty awesome. And I wasn't. Never. Yeah. I've always been kind of a dork. So if you'd like to talk to me about this, please leave me a comment. You can get up with me on Facebook. I'm not a counselor. I don't have any. But I think I have a little bit of experience and insight on it. And if I can help somebody, I'd really like to do that. And, just remember, you can get through this. You can do this, man. You're strong. Man, woman, anybody, kid. You can do it. And if you had any idea how good it feels to not have to shake those pills or not have to, I think that would be reward enough for most people. So definitely give it some thought. Definitely think about the people you love, the people who have stopped contacting you because of your addictions. And you can get through this. And just remember, I'll be here when you need me.